All right, man. Well, okay, here we go. Welcome back.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
It's great to have you as my guest once again. Regular listeners will remember Brady Harron.
Regular listeners will remember Brady Harron from every previous episode.
That's right. It's good to have you. Well, it's a bit like if this was the Letterman show, which one of us is Paul Schaefer? That's going back a while.
You're so retro. You always pick things like... You're like a human time capsule, Tim. A Tim capsule. So both of my ideas in today's show are going to be kind of like... almost like game showy, contesty type things in some way.
Oh, okay.
So my first idea is called... Life Top Trumps. Are you familiar with the card game Top Trumps?
No, I'm not. I'm familiar with the saying coming up trumps.
So I'll explain the way Top Trumps, the card game, works for people who don't know, so they can then understand what my podcast idea is. So we're going to get there in the end. So the card game Top Trumps comes in all different themes. You could buy a soccer player themed pack of these cards, or a wildlife-themed pack of these cards, or for the case of my example, I will use a car-themed pack of Top Trumps cards. And you have all these cards, right, and you deal with them between 2 people or 3 people or however many people are playing. And each card will have a different car on it. And under the picture of that car, there will be, I think, maybe 6 criteria. I'm not sure. Say there are 6 criteria, and it will be something like top speed, weight of the car, the year that it was released,
right,
its horsepower, all these different criteria that have numbers attached to them, right? And you will take the top card from your pack, and I will take the top card from my pack, and say you have the power to start with, right? You will look at all the criteria on your card, and you will pick the category that you think you will be able to trump me on. So you might say, all right, I've got this amazing Ferrari card here. I'm going to go with top speed. So you haven't seen my card. You say, I'm going to go for top speed. The top speed of my car is 210 kilometers per hour. And then the other person will get their card and say, oh, well, my top speed is 220. So I trump you. And the person who has the best speed keeps the card.
Right.
Like they get both cards. So the idea is as you pull each card from your deck, you're trying to pick a category and a number which you think will trump the other person without knowing what they've got. So you'll think, oh, this card looks really strong in this department.
Right.
Surely I'm going to trump him or her.
Yep.
And then you work your way through the pack, and then when someone loses all their cards or someone gets all the cards, you have a winner. Does that make sense?
It kind of does. Let me ask a couple of clarifying questions. You choose the card randomly.
I think you have to take... I don't play this game a lot. I had it when I was a kid. It's not a game I play a lot. You take your card from the top.
Yep.
So it is kind of chosen randomly. You're not like going through your pack finding a really powerful card. You take the card that fate has given you, but then you look at the categories and you choose the category manually that you think you're going to be strongest in.
Okay. Yep. And you do a little face-off on that category, hoping you'll win.
Yep.
And if you do win, you hold onto your card and the other person puts their card down. Is that right?
Or they give you their card and you then put it onto the bottom of your pack.
Oh, okay. Yep.
Your pack becomes a bit bigger and theirs becomes smaller. And there can be more than 2 players as well.
Yep.
So some people's packs are shrinking, others are expanding, and the idea is to get all the cards by judicious decisions of your category and trumping the other person by getting a higher score in that category.
And all the cards are on the one topic. So they're all car cards in this case. And
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So when I was growing up, I've only ever owned one pack of Top Trumps cards when I was quite young, and I had one that was about rockets. So you'd have things like the height of the rocket, the year that the rocket first launched, its thrust power, and things like that. As you played the game more and more, you become more familiar with what categories are strong and weak, and you become better at playing with that pack.
And you're learning something. Is that kind of the point of the cards themselves?
I don't know if it's really they're supposed to be.
All right. I didn't know if it was an educational game from school or something, but no.
No, it's not educational. So, you can buy like a Manchester United pack, and it's got all Manchester United players. And if I pick my card and it's some player who scores lots of goals, I might think, well, surely Tim's not going to have a better goal scorer than this.
Okay.
So I'll say, Tim, the category I choose is goals. My player has scored 200 goals for Manchester United. How many has yours got?
Right.
And then you'll be like, oh, yeah, mine's a bit rubbish, so you get my card.
Okay, all right.
So that's how the game Top Trumps works. So let's now get to my podcast eventually,
That's great.
which is called Live Top Trumps. And what happens is you have two guests on the show, preferably two guests that don't know each other too well, because that would make the game harder to play. Like, I don't think you and I would be particularly strong at this game because we know each other reasonably well. But you'll have two guests on the show, and then they will just choose categories in their life with a number attached to it that they think will beat the other person. And then they face off and compare, and then they just have a bit of a chat, and it's just like a fun thing, and it's a big joke. So I might come on the show and say, okay, Tim, the first category I'm going to go for that I think I trump you in is points on my driver's license.
Oh, yeah.
I have 6 penalty points on my driver's license. How many have you got? And then you'll be like, well, actually, I've got 9. And then you'll just have a chat about how you've got the points on your driver's license over the years or things like that. So the idea would be for people to think about aspects of their life that they think will trump the other person, and then just have like a bit of banter about it all.
Oh, okay. So there's no real winner. There's no cards involved, but you can score points as you go along and take it in turns.
It's almost like your life is the card. So it could be, I could say, okay, the category I'm going to choose today is
the number of countries I've visited in the world or something. Yeah.
Good example. Or number of books I've read this year.
Yeah.
It could just be things. Yeah. You get the idea.
I do.
And I think it will just lead to good conversation.
It's good. I like the idea. I tell you why I like the idea is not just because it'll start a good conversation, but because it's making explicit something that's kind of going on subconsciously anyway in many conversations, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, it's like, well, you think that's a funny story? Let me tell you another funny story when I was in an airport, you know?
Yeah, you are outdoing each other. I think the show will be at its strongest, though, when people aren't just bragging.
No.
Like, obviously, a number of countries I've been to and things like that
Yeah.
are a bit braggy. But there are things that wouldn't be braggy. Like, I think I've got more points on my driver's license than you. Or,
Yeah.
number of times I've been arrested. So I think the idea would be to choose categories that will be, like, surprising and will reveal surprising. The more I think about it, the more I think it would be funny being done between two people who know each other. Like, if you and I did it, right,
Yeah.
it would be funny because we would suddenly learn things about each other that we didn't know by
that's true.
doing this. Like, it would be quite revealing. Like, if I suddenly found out, I didn't know Tim had been arrested before, or but then the surprise you would get if it turned out I had been as well, and things like that. So I think it would be like a show full of surprises and funny stories.
That's right. You could have the same people and you learn more and more and more about them. So you know what I mean? You become more and more curious about them. The other thing that's funny is if you play it humble as well. So you could always just say, well, the fewest countries travelled. You know what I mean? You wouldn't believe how little I've travelled. And then, rather than the brag, it's sort of like the you understate yourself and say how ridiculous it is or how fewer vegetables that you have eaten in the last week and that sort of thing as well.
That could be it. You could name your category and then you could say, I was going to say you could name your category and say you predict whether you're going to be the high or the low. But I don't think that's fair because you could always win that by just picking things that are 0. So I think you would have to always be the winner and have the higher number. Otherwise the game could be a bit silly. But how many cars have you owned, or how many pets have you had, or how many pets do you have now? Or a lot of things are off the table, obviously, because we know each other well and there are things that you're always going to win or lose. But I like the idea of exploring it. But I also think this would work really well between two people who don't know each other very well and throwing them in. The only problem with that is the podcast would then suffer from, will these two people have chemistry? Each episode will be a real lottery as to whether you've picked two people with chemistry. But
yeah, that's true.
Hey, there's the idea.
I think it's a good idea. In fact, I think it's even it could be a TV show. Like, you know what I mean? I can see it with a panel of 3.
Knowing us, it probably is.
Yeah, that's right.
Or one will be released next week that's been in production for 3 years, the week before we suggest it, which seems to be the thing that happens a lot at the moment.
Or the idea will be it'll appear on Netflix next week, having been in development since this episode.
The fast turnaround. Yeah.
That's right.
The Netflix commissioning meeting, which involves quickly playing that week's Unmade podcast.
Was it the South Park or the Simpsons? I think who did the. They have the guy. They cross to. It must be South Park. I think who crossed to the guy at Netflix who answers the phone. Hello, Netflix. Your project's been greenlit. Anyway, I think this is a great idea. Yeah.
Give us a category, Tim. Let's have a game.
Well, we'll stick with a car. We talked about our first car.
Yeah.
Number of cars owned.
Ooh,
Is that interesting?
Yeah, you're going to beat me on that. How many cars have you owned? And let me think how many I've owned.
I'm trying to think. There was the Renault that we talked about a few episodes ago. Yeah, then I had someone else's car that I used for a while. I can't even remember the type of car. It was orange. And yeah, I had a bunch of cheaper cars while you maintained your Barry, the Barina, for quite a while.
Well, I'll tell you now, I've owned 4 cars.
4. No, I think I owned 4 while you had Barry.
So you would win that category, and a conversation about cars ensues.
That's not a particularly interesting topic.
I'm going to try and trump you with a category now.
Yeah, I am.
I'm going to go for number of videos uploaded to YouTube. How many videos have you uploaded to YouTube?
I don't know if I've ever done any. I don't know if I don't think I've ever uploaded a video. I wouldn't know how to upload a video to YouTube.
I think I'm going to have you on this one then, because I've uploaded 3,353.
How many?
3,353, apparently.
Wow. That is more than me.
Yeah.
But man, it's not about the quantity, it's about quality.
Okay. Oh, then I'm in trouble.
If I ever do upload a video to YouTube, it'll have to be a good one. Do you have a favourite video that you've uploaded to YouTube? Is there one clear standout?
Do you know what? Today, as we are speaking, is the exact 10-year anniversary of one of my channels, my chemistry channel, which is called Periodic Videos.
Yeah.
And the video that I will be uploading later today, well, I'll be uploading 2 videos later today, one by the professor and one by me, in which we list our top 10 favourite videos on that particular channel.
Oh, what a fantastic segue ad, man. That's great. That's perfect. So
Thank you.
You don't want to give it away here? You're actually going to put it up later on. Is that right?
I am. I don't mind giving it away. I think the favourite video I've ever uploaded to YouTube for me is one that I made which is on Periodic Videos, that channel, is when I went to Mount Everest Base Camp, and every night we boiled water at a different altitude to show that how as you get higher and higher, the boiling point of water gets lower and lower. And I think that's my favourite video I've uploaded. It's one that I still sometimes will go back and watch, which I never do.
That's cool. Why is it your favourite? Is it because of the wonderful experience on the trip, or why that?
Yeah, I just like how it looks. I think it's beautiful, and I like that it's a bit of a journey, and I like the music in it, and it brings back a lot of good memories. I just personally enjoy it. Like, you know, I don't necessarily think it's the best video ever made. Well, it certainly isn't the best video ever made, or maybe not my best video. But it gives me the most pleasure.
That's cool. That's interesting.
It'd be a big call if I said it's the best video ever made.
Yeah, that is a big call. Is there any part of making the video process that is your favourite part? You go, oh, I'll get to this bit. This is the fun part, and you settle yourself for it. Whereas some other parts might be a bit more tedious or repetitive.
I mean, obviously, editing is the tedious part of making a video compared to shooting it, but I think I often prefer the editing more. Perhaps in many ways you get to express your creativity a lot more during the editing than during the filming, depending on what you're making. So in some ways I prefer the editing more than the filming. But other times when you first start an edit, it can be quite exciting, like when you're going on a big trip, like on a train trip or something, and you've got that exciting feeling of what's ahead. But other times it can be a bit daunting when you think about what's ahead, knowing all the minutiae you're going to have to do on top of the fun, and on top of being creative and the creative decisions you're going to get to make. You know, you're also going to have to do things like edit the sound and do the color correction, and put in the transitions and make sure all the text is spelled correctly. And so it can also be a bit daunting if you're not in the mood.
Yeah.
So in answer to your question, I haven't answered your question.
No, but you've told me a little bit about it.
I prefer editing to filming, but I wish the editing was quicker.
Yeah.
Let's have one more top trumps category from you, Tim. See if you can beat me one more time. You beat me comfortably with cars, although you never put a number on the cars.
No, I don't think I can. Look, I think it's about 8 or 9. And I had a couple of company cars, which don't really count because they're not yours.
I think a company car counts as your car in this kind of list.
Well, it might be 10 then, because they get turned over every couple of years as well. So I had a few of them, maybe 10 cars in the fleet. That's right. The Hind fleet.
Yeah, the Hind collection.
The Hind collection, that's right. I'm looking here in front of me and there's a Rubik's Cube. So I'm trying to take a cue from a Rubik's Cube. And I want to ask, about favourite, but this isn't about favourite. It's about numbers of board games or something like that. How many board games do you have in the house?
Ooh.
I know Rubik's Cube isn't a board game, but a Rubik's Cube-y kind of board game.
Board games in the house is going to be very low. I do own I have Scrabble, and And I don't play that. I bought it for something I needed to film. And I have Operation, which was also bought for a joke, if that counts as a board game.
Operation is a cool game. I've not played Operation since I was a kid. That's great.
I bought that for a party. We had a party at my house, and what we did was we had like an Olympics, and in each room there was a different game or thing that you had to try and win, and we went from room to room, and in one of the rooms we all played Operation.
That's great.
Other than that, I have Yahtzee. Again, that's not really a board game, although it's got like a little rolling pot.
I
don't have a lot of board games. I don't play board games because it turns me into a monster.
Are you very competitive with your board? Well, I know you're very competitive with your board games. Yep.
Yes. So I choose not to play them. I love other people playing them, and I encourage the playing of board games, but I just say, but don't have me play with you.
Right.
I'll make the drinks.
So your official policy is pro board game, but you refrain personally from it. Okay.
It's not that I even mind I don't like losing, but it's not even that I mind losing. I don't like it when people don't play it right and follow the rules and stuff. So if everyone says, let's have another roll, or let's just... I'm like, no, that's not the rules of the game.
Yeah. I'm trying to think how much we've got. They're in the other room, but look, there's this Rubik's Cube that's here. Monopoly gets a massive thrashing. It gets played. In fact, we're on our second Monopoly because the first one, the box breaks and things get lost and spread around the house and stuff. So we've had to buy another one, and then we had to go through and make sure all the bits from the first one were all clearly delineated and put in the bin.
Do you still have Monopoly money? Because I was watching some people play a modern game of Monopoly the other day, like at an airport or something, and instead of like paper money, everyone was holding like this electronic device, and it was keeping tally of how much money everyone had electronically, like a bank account.
I've never even heard of that. That's a disgrace.
I couldn't believe it. It was like, do they not understand the importance of Monopoly money?
That's right.
I guess in a cashless society, one day the idea of paper Monopoly money is just going to seem ridiculous.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah. Was the device a proper Monopoly device, or were they just using some app?
I could have this wrong, or maybe I dreamt it, but in my head they were like official Monopoly devices.
Wow.
It was like, it had come with the game, like they'd phased out money. Let me Google this. Is there cashless Monopoly? Hang on.
They're sort of tapping on each other's side of the table to transfer money and all that. Not even cards. They've moved past credit cards, swiping on each other's side of the table and with the bank.
Yeah, here we go. There's an article about it here on Mashable as well. Hasbro showed off a new version that eliminates both the game's signature paper money and the banker position. In the new game, dubbed Monopoly Ultimate Banking Game, in-game cash is replaced with special bank cards players scan on a handheld banking unit to make purchases and pay off debt.
That would speed up the game so incredibly quickly.
I wonder if, how like one of the great features of Monopoly is like stealing money from the bank when no one's looking. I wonder if like you now have to like code and use hacking to try and cheat to get more money. No more slipping a 500 when the kids go to the bathroom.
I think a good 40% of the time playing Monopoly is, someone going 1, 200, 300, like just reaching over, counting it out, dropping one on the floor. You know what I mean? That sort of time. So the whole game would be compressed. It'd be like roll the dice and then quick, bang, scan your card, move on.
I mean, what they should also do is automate the dice rolling and the movement of pieces. So all you have to do is press a button and then it just tells you who won.
That's right. That's right. Like, things just move.
I mean, everything's done electronically.
I love I tell you what I like. I like the idea of pass and go and $200 automatically being transferred to your account by a sensor on the board. But you've gone even further and said that every purchase is just automated all the way around.
I wonder if they have problems with bank fraud and things like that.
Do you remember playing that awesome game of Monopoly years ago in the share house?
I do remember we had an epic game of Monopoly.
Oh, it was incredible.
That was a pretty great game. Because everyone was making ridiculous deals. Like, if you land on my property, you can have 20% off what you owe in exchange for that property. And didn't it get to a point where all the deals were written down on bits of paper so we knew what all the contracts were?
There were massive side deals going on and contracts and clauses. Yeah. But it got to the point where one of the guys was had a what was it called, a deal with every other player whereby they wouldn't have to pay rent when they got onto their property. So they just ended up with hardly any money but just cruising around the board again and again and again.
Oh yeah, that's right. He became like a hobo that wasn't making money or losing money. He was just doing laps of the board.
Just couch surfing all the way around the board.
Yeah. That was how that guy lived his life as well.
That was a ferocious game. That was an incredible game. Anyway, so we got Monopoly, we got Scrabble, we've got checkers and chess. I bought a nice wooden carved sort of.
Oh yeah,
board.
I've got chess, and I've got one of those, and I've got Hungry Hippos too.
Oh, that's cool. That's a quite skillful game. After a few games of chess, you love just a quiet Hungry Hippos to see out the evening.
Yeah, they should have a world championship of Hungry Hippos. That's like the World Chess Championship, and everyone follows it online and talks about the strategy.
Deep Blue.
Deep Blue, yeah, that's right. Will there ever be a point where a computer can beat a human at Hungry Hippos? The technology exists.
Do you remember in the film The Bodyguard, right, where Dustin Hoffman takes Whitney Houston back to his dad's place to hide her when she's under
Kevin
siege?
Costner. I don't think Dustin Hoffman was in there.
Oh, sorry, Kevin Costner.
You obviously saw an extremely highbrow version of The Bodyguard.
That's right. Sorry, Kevin Costner. That's right, I misspoke. And they pull out this game of chess that's covered in, it's got dust over it. There's the dust. That's what I was thinking of, the dust. It's got dust and all over it. And it's a game that's been going on for 8 years. Every time they see each other, they just do a move or two.
Right.
But imagine if they pulled out Hungry Hippos and it was covered in dust. And they had to polish off that centre bit. You know what I mean? And then, all right, let's go.
They'd stopped mid-game and there were still a few bowls left on the table to be eaten.
It's
we've been playing this game for 50 years. Who's going to get the yellow golden bowl? We still don't know.
No. I envy Hungry Hippos. There we go. I think I have slightly more than you, but I can't remember. There are a few other games there. There is a good game, actually Rummy King. Rummy King is a game we have, which is a pretty legendary game. My parents used to play.
Is that a board game, though? Does it have to have a board to be a board game? Because Rummy King's just like tiles, isn't it?
Yeah, but or
is there a board?
Oh, okay. So this is... Well, I'm just thinking of games. Sort of fun games.
I'm just putting the question out there. Does a game have to be a board to be a board game?
I think this counts. The fact that I started with the Rubik's Cube indicates that I was thinking rather broadly when it came to board games.
Rubik's Cube is definitely not a board game. That's not even a game. That's a puzzle.
Or a toy.
Or a toy.
Rummy King, or Rubbing Cub as it's called now, which my parents used to play for hours and hours on end. They were very competitive.
I thought Rummy Cub was a different variation of Rummy King. I thought it was a different game. Is it the exact same game?
I'm not entirely sure, but I've never been able to find Rummy King, and all the pieces are exactly the same. And I just play it the way Mum and Dad taught me to play it.
Because I've seen because I remember how much your dad loved Rummy King. He was obsessed with it. Mm-hmm. And I see Rummy Cub in the shops, and I also don't see Rummy King. And I always liked to think that Rummy King was this exclusive emperor of games that only your dad had access to, and all the normal people who aren't as good as your dad had to play Rummy Cub because they were still cubs and they hadn't graduated to become a Rummy King.
Well, then I'm not qualified then. I was never brought into that particularly hereditary line of succession.
Maybe after years and years of playing Rummy Cub and beating all your friends and beating all the masters, you're taken into a secret room and they say, look, you're really good at Rummy Cub. We think it's time for you to have this. And they pass over a box of Rummy King.
It's a very gender-exclusive term, though, isn't it? I wonder if there's a Rummy Queen somewhere.
Yeah.
I remember watching, you and I trying to watch TV, and Mum and Dad playing Rummy King so loudly that it was, we were looking back going, oh, come on, we're trying to watch The Late Show or some legendary show, and they were just laughing so loud. It's hang on, we're trying to watch this so we can laugh unbelievably loud and annoy you. So...
What could happen in a game of Rummy King that would make you laugh?
That's just my mum.
I don't know the rules, so maybe it could be an incredibly funny game. I just don't know. There was a mystery to me. Did we ever play it with them? Did they ever teach us? We must have played it with them once.
Yeah, I played hundreds of games with them, and then I grew out of it somewhere around the time I met you.
Well, that could be one of your categories in my Top Trumps podcast. Number of games of Rummy King played.
That's right. And I'll have to ask my mum, and she's probably got it all written down. There we go. So good idea. So what's it called again? Trump Life? What is it? Trumps.
Well, the name I gave it was Life Top Trumps. Of course, Top Trumps I think is a trademarked name, so we'll have to come up with a better name than that.
Yeah.
Or a different name anyway. But it's based on the game Top Trumps.
Yeah, good idea, man. Well done.
All right, thank you. I appreciate your praise.
I know you do. One of the categories we could have is good podcast ideas, and we can count through because we've had 2 ideas per show each.
I think you and I are battling out a 0-0 draw at the moment.
We're going to keep making this show until we have one.
Let's have an idea from you.
My idea is sparked by a conversation we had the other day, unrecorded. Actually, it was a text message conversation. and we were texting back and forward, and you asked me, you said you were going to see the new Han Solo movie. Oh, no, I said, I think I was going to go see it. I still haven't seen it, but I must have been planning to see it. And you said, do you want to know anything about it? Which is, I sort of took as, giving it a thumbs up or a thumbs down kind of thing. So I wrote back 1-word review, and you just, I don't think you ever gave me a 1-word review or something like that. I can't remember what you said, but it's an idea. I thought, what if you had to review something, and a film is an example as anything, in 1 word?
I think I remember what I said to you.
What?
When you said 1-word review, I think I said that's the worst idea for a podcast ever.
Oh, yeah.
And now you're making it your idea.
That's right. So, man, I want a one-word review of this podcast idea.
In our short text conversation, I jokingly said, "Oh, that's a terrible idea for a podcast." But then I think I came around to the idea of thinking it was a good idea for a podcast, because after you give your 1-word review, you could have an endless argument about whether that word was a good word or the right word or what would have been a better word. So it's basically a way of reviewing things by arguing over what the 1 word should be.
That's right, yeah. So you end up using a lot of words to justify your 1 word, which defeats the whole purpose of having 1 word.
I actually think that's a pretty good fun idea, and it's a pretty novel. Like, obviously 1-word reviews or short reviews is not like brand new, but making it the whole premise of the show is quite good fun. Quite a good fun idea.
I mean, I started thinking about whether it might even work with 2. If you have 2, once it gets to 3 words, you start going, okay, everyone's going to agree. But 2 words lets you say something like, innovative and but boring, or something like that.
That's it. Innovative and is 2 words, Tim.
Oh, yeah. But it allows you to add a bit of nuance.
Yeah, it lets you
2
put
things
like
together.
an adjective or like something like that, or
like boring but short. And so it's like, oh, good.
Again, boring, but you're definitely going to need 3 words, I can tell.
I can't help myself. So let's test it out then. Let's see if it works. Name a film.
All right, let's choose a film.
Right.
What would have been your 1-word review for, on the Star Wars theme, let's go with, what was that new one that came out? The first one that came out? Was it Force Awakens? The first new one?
The first new one was The Force Awakens, yeah.
What would have been your 1-word review for that?
Nostalgic. It felt nostalgic.
Yeah.
Am I allowed to say any more words now? Like to justify it? Or do I have to?
Well, in the show you would, yeah.
I don't know if I'm allowed to speak.
My 1-word review for that would be relief.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. That's a good one. That says a lot. It says a lot. My nostalgic one could be seen as it's derivative and it's a bit too, you know what I mean? It's playing to the fans, which it was.
It did, definitely.
Yeah. But your relief one implies that.
I like it, and you could apply this to like old classic films as well and things like that. I do think 1 word, I mean, obviously you don't get more limiting than 1 word unless you started making it like, 1 letter or a facial expression or something, but...
Facial expression.
Yeah. but other than that, like, I do think having 1-word reviews would be a little bit limiting after a while. Like, I think maybe 3 words is better.
But then it becomes a little bit, I reckon it's too much. I think 2 words actually would work.
Too much? Oh, God, he's waffling on a bit now, isn't he? 3 words.
3 words.
Shut up. All it ever is with you is talk.
What did Tim and Brady think of this movie? I don't know. I stopped reading after the 2nd word. Well, the 2 words allows you to qualify each word. So you get to... Yeah, well, just like I explained before.
Okay, what would be your 2-word review of Force Awakens?
Nostalgic and relief. What would be your 2 words?
I've got a clever 2-word review of Force Awakens. Do you want to know what it is?
Yeah.
New Hope.
Oh, man. Yeah, okay. So that sort of adds a little bit to... It plays along the same lines as the relief, doesn't it?
How clever is that, though? No, because it also throws things forward.
Yeah.
And it harks back to the film it's based on.
Yeah.
That's a genius review.
It's new. So it's new and hope. They're both future-oriented.
Gives hope, but it's like the film New Hope, which it's based on. And
Very well done, man. Very well done.
Thank you.
So there we go. So I think there's something to be done there. But I think the idea of it as a podcast, it would be more interesting if it was someone... When it comes to these kinds of films, it's got to be people that you do want to know what their opinion is. So... I think it would work even better if...
That does help in a podcast.
It does. Like there are certain people, like in Australia, there's a very famous film reviewer called David Stratton, and he's kind of like the Roger Ebert in America, in Australia. You know, and if he was to choose, I would want to know what his 2 words were. I don't necessarily want to know what, just any other reviewer or a person on a podcast who, 2 blokes talking on a podcast. So,
all right, I want a couple more 2-word reviews from you, though.
All right.
Can I give you some more films and have your 2-word review?
Do it.
I've just jumped to 2 words, and I'm not going to include the middle joining word because you clearly cannot get into your brain that middle word is a word because you keep saying and but in between your 2 words, so that word doesn't count. So.
I'm assuming you have the ability to self-edit.
You ready? All right, I want to have your 2-word review of the Australian film BMX Bandits.
Ooh. Ooh is my first word.
Ooh. Ooh and
I would have to say, it's difficult. Am I reviewing it fresh or am I reviewing it now, 30 years later?
What's the difference? It's legendary both times. I still sometimes go onto YouTube and watch the closing music credits of that film.
Really?
You know how there's that BMX song and it shows them having all the races on the BMX track?
Yeah.
Spoiler, apology for that. I love that. I love the song and watching that. Like, I'm quite nostalgic about that film.
I'm ready to fly down the bridge. Competition guides. I've got to win.
Nicole Kidman's in her yellow professional gear and everything, and she's rumour has it, may have used a stunt double for some of those BMX tricks.
Don't ruin it for me. Are you Team Goose or Team PJ?
When I was young, I was more of a PJ.
Yeah.
I've never said that out loud. I don't know why, but I just sort of liked him better. But
Look, I'm really sorry about that. We'll make it up to you.
Oh, don't worry. It's all right. Are you hurt?
Only in the wallet. This is going to cost heaps.
I tell you what those guys have is deep voices. They are. They're kids with they're on the walkie-talkies with deep, broad Australian accents. It's really probably what everyone listening from around the world assumes is an Australian accent, but it clangs in even our ears, I think, a little bit.
Oh, it's the least we could do. If it wasn't, we couldn't afford it.
Yeah, well, if you want money, you could always go into scrap metal.
Are you kidding? We'll fix them up somehow and get you mobile too. Somehow.
I think every guy in the world thinks they're PJ, but they're really Goose.
Some pretty inside baseball conversation we're having now. But I think some people may check out YouTube. I actually have the DVD, believe it or not. I went out and bought it some years ago. I found it in a bin, so I bought it. So
I'm still waiting for your 2-word review. So for that handful of people out there who haven't seen BMX Bandits, know whether they should go and watch it.
I feel like I want my first word to be amateur, which is a bit harsh, but it's amateur. I want to say childlike, heartwarming. I'm using too many words though, but it is amateur is one of the words.
How about delightfully amateurish?
Yeah, that's good. Yeah. That's delightfully amateurish. It's the film where, there's a car that gets blown up in one scene, and then a couple of scenes later, it's just a prop in the background on another part of the town. They're driving through, they're riding their BMXs through a tip, and it's like, hang on, there's the car that was blown up in the city an hour ago, and it's a prop in another scene. They're just saving money all over the place. But
I don't remember that.
Oh, well, you're not the aficionado that I am. What will your 2 words be for?
My 2-word review is going to be walkie-talkie. Because the genius of that film is that the whole, the MacGuffin of the film, or the thing that the whole film centres around the kids trying to get, are walkie-talkies. And that's also the thing that the bank robbers want. The kids get the bank robbers' walkie-talkies. They were absolute geniuses for choosing the one object that would appeal to both bank robbers and kids.
Yeah.
Bank robbers use things like guns and masks and all these things that kids shouldn't be messing with. But the one thing a bank robber would use that a kid would also want to use is a walkie-talkie.
Yeah.
And I think that was genius, that this whole film centres around people wanting walkie-talkies.
The whole thing is they can sell them and make a bit of money. So they just sell them to people who, are just going to have them around the city, very easily found. They don't sell them on the internet because, of course, there's no internet. They just sell them to their mates.
I love it. I love it. They found a way to put a bunch of kids on BMXs in conflict with these hardened bank robbers. Oh, let me give you. What about a 2-word review? Let me give you a more serious one because that was a bit unfair. What about a 2-word review for The Godfather?
Yeah. The Godfather. I try to avoid the word classic, but it is sort of in some ways the ultimate classic film. It's on the top of so many of those lists, and it feels like it's in a category all to itself. Yeah. It feels genuine. Gosh, it's really hard. I feel like I want to put in a quote from it, like something like mattresses or something like that, or cannoli or something. Yeah. It's also smooth. Man, I don't know. This is actually really, really hard. This is a podcast where you'll have to edit out the silent bits where people are thinking carefully, or they have to come prepared.
Yeah, hopefully they will have thought of the word beforehand. It's like you've got one job. Have thought of the word.
That's right.
Like, don't start recording and think, now, what's my word going to be?
Thinking time. Thinking music. We could put on some thinking music.
The first word that comes to my head for The Godfather is absorbing. I'm completely absorbed by that film.
Yeah. That's what I mean by it has its own self-contained world that just feels like forget you're watching a film. It just feels like everything's ringing true.
I would say absorbing and authentic, but I don't know if it's authentic because, what do I know about being in a crime family back then or now or ever any time? But
and that's the thing, it rings true as a film about the mob in, what is it, the 40s, just after the war maybe, 50s, early 50s?
Where the World War II's only just finished, hasn't it? So yeah, it must be late 40s or early 50s, I guess.
It does ring true and feels authentic. It feels authentic, which is the most important thing with a film, I guess.
It's well acted, but I think well acted is a bit of a boring review. That would apply to lots of films that are well acted.
I was watching Robert Duvall the other day in something. In fact, I was watching that film The Paper again from the 90s where he's like the editor.
Oh, yeah.
And I was just looking at him and I was just thinking about him in The Godfather again as the, what's his name? Sonny's friend. I've gone blank.
Yeah, he's the consigliere, isn't he? What's his name?
Yeah,
It's an Irish name, isn't it?
Can you edit in the answer later on, man?
Is it Hagen? Hagen's
Tom.
his name, isn't
Hagen,
it?
yeah.
Tom.
He plays it so well.
I mean, I thought he would never play a better role than that until I saw him in Days of Thunder.
Is he in Days of Thunder as well? Is he?
He's like the experienced team boss that teaches Tom Cruise how he needs to drive.
Oh, you're really pulling out the Nicole Kidman films tonight, man.
I am, yeah, well, what can I say?
Okay, quick 2-word review of Days of Thunder.
Rip-roaring.
Rip-roaring. Top Gun on wheels.
Rubbings racing. Brain surgeon. Because Nicole Kidman plays a brain surgeon.
Oh, yeah. She has that lovely scene looking at his eye. The eye is very beautiful. How do I remember lines from average movies from 20 years ago?
That's all you do, Tim. That's like your one skill.
My superpower.
Remembering things from 20 years ago is your superpower.
Oh, that's
like some offhand comment I once made as we were driving down Morford Road that seems burned in your memory. Remember that time we had a quarter pounder and you said that you like the colour green? And I'm like, what?
I do
No?
remember. Oh, sorry. It's just an example. All right. Next idea from you, man. Let's go.
This idea is inspired by, it's inspired by a TV show I'm watching at the moment, but it's also inspired by what seems like every TV show in the world these days. And this idea is called elimination, or maybe process of elimination, because I just like that saying, but I'm going to call it elimination. And the way this podcast works is it runs in a series of 6 episodes, and then you can have a new series of 6 episodes and then a new series, but each series lasts for 6 episodes. And it starts with 6 presenters, preferably who have been brought together from disparate places, but have a common theme to them. They could be podcast presenters. So you could say, okay, I'm going to choose 6 technology podcast presenters from various podcasts around the world, or 6 experts on cricket, or 6 people all with the name Barry. There's just something they've all got in common.
Yep.
And they present an episode together of the podcast. And what the podcast episode is about is dictated, obviously, by their expertise or whatever. And then next week, there's another podcast, but one of the presenters has been eliminated by some process. And the next episode, another one has been eliminated, until the final episode is just the one presenter who remains talking for a little while. And because it's hard to talk on your own, I imagine after 10 or 15 minutes in that final episode, the other 5 all come back and they all have a chat about how the series went. So it's a group-presented podcast where the number of people in the group becomes less by 1 every episode. And the way they're eliminated, most obviously, I guess, would be chosen by listeners, like some kind of vote. Or it could be chosen by the presenters themselves. They could be kicking someone out of their own group. But that just happens week on week.
So what are they talking about? Or doesn't that matter?
They're just talking about whatever their area is. So say they were all technology experts. They could just choose the topic of each episode. So they could say, okay, so this episode we're going to talk about mobile phones, and they just talk about it. And you think, oh, that's nice. And they might say, next week we're going to talk about laptop computers. Join us then. But one of them won't be there next week, and we don't yet know who that person's going to be. In my head, they don't spend time talking about the elimination process. Everyone knows it's happening, but it's not talked about.
Right.
But I don't know. Maybe it would be talked about. Maybe it would become part of the show itself. But in my head, it's not. It's just this like elephant in the room, and it never gets talked about until the final episode, maybe, when they all come back together and say, oh, that was fun. Oh, why do you reckon you got kicked out? Oh, I don't know. Maybe people didn't like what I had to say about the iPhone. Ha ha ha, and stuff like that. Or
Yeah.
It's not supposed to be mean-spirited, and there's a sense of fun about who's going. And maybe it will become a joke each episode about who they reckon's going to get the arse this week. But anyway, that's the idea. It's a group. It's a shrinking group until you're left with just one man or woman standing at the end.
So the idea is to be as interesting as you can. The idea is that it's like, oh, we'll get rid of that person, and the person at the end is the one who's the best at explaining, or the best at presenting, or the best at talking about
Maybe,
things.
yeah. I mean, the danger is it becomes a bit of a popularity contest between people who already have followings, and I'd hate to see it become too much like that. But yeah, the criteria that by which people get kept probably would be dictated by the method by which they were being eliminated. So if the public were voting, yes, it probably would just be a bit of a popularity contest. But if the presenters were deciding who to vote off the island, then maybe it would be different criteria. I don't know.
That's interesting.
That's just my idea anyway. I'm just watching so many shows at the moment where people get, someone gets eliminated each week. I thought, imagine a podcast with... I mean, again, no doubt such things exist, but I like the idea of the short series. This month, it's technology podcast. Next month, it's sports podcasters.
Yep.
Next month after that, it's going to be music experts,
Yeah, okay.
I think it gets you into a variety of topics and introduces you to lots of people, but there's also like a fun... There's a reason to listen next week to see who comes and goes. And
I'm
things like
curious by this idea, but I'm not 100% sold on it yet. They're just talking over the top, like you and I are chatting back and forward, or they're giving like a prepared talk or anything like that, or they're just...
I mean, don't know. In my head, it's just impromptu chatting about a topic, like a lot of podcasts. It's not a scripted thing. I have to admit, I probably wouldn't want to be on this podcast, but...
I don't think you would be on it for very long, man.
No, probably not. But you could also vote to bring people back, like halfway through. There could be like or for the final episode could be the winner plus someone who you voted to bring back, or you could do all sorts of things. The final episode where the reunion where they're all back together, I think would be a really cool episode, because that would be a real laugh as they all talk about, because presumably the people that were eliminated can also talk about the conversations they were excluded from and how they feel about that. And you'd need people with a sense of fun and a thick skin to volunteer to be on this, obviously.
Yeah.
The sort of people that have podcasts and are public figures very often also have considerable egos and probably wouldn't like the idea of being voted off shows. But if you go into it with a sense of fun, I think it'd be all right. I don't know. It's just an idea. I've been watching too many episodes of Love Island.
Oh dear. There is a sense, this is also an idea which you kind of subconsciously play in your own mind or in conversation when watching a panel show. So you do, like you watch this a little bit and you sort of say, I want that guy second from the left to say more. You know what I mean? Like he's funnier, or he's saying interesting points or so forth. And then there's another person making points, and for some reason you're like, no, they don't, they're not as funny. So you are kind of, you know what I mean? Like voting for people in your mind and hoping that the host sort of throws to them more all the time anyway.
And you've all got podcasts that have either regular presenting teams or rotating presenting teams, and you always hope the ones you like are going to be on it. And there's always the ones you don't like oh, no, I'm never interested when Brady talks, but I always like Tim's stuff. I wish there was more of Tim. This is a chance for you to maybe shape that in a way.
That's right. Only one of us will be hosting this next week, man. We'll see. Maybe we could run a poll. Talk about people with thick skin.
Tune in next week to find out which one of us is gone forever.
Oh dear. That would be interesting. There is a sense by which, So this is what you do play this game on Twitter a bit as well, don't you? You follow people because you like what they're going to have to say in very brief ways, and you unfollow people if they're, when they're not doing a good job of it and that kind of thing. So you want to hear more and more of
curating your own podcast.
Yeah.
The democratic curation of a podcast.
Yeah.
I actually am more intrigued by the idea of the podcast team themselves voting off the presenter rather than the public.
Oh, yeah.
Because the public, it will become, if you get some super famous podcaster that everybody loves, like they're never going to get voted off, are they? Because, they bring a fandom with them.
Yeah.
But if the presenters are deciding who to get rid of
Wow.
secretly, like it would be an anonymous vote, that would be interesting. So, this week, Brady's not with us this week anymore, and you know that the presenters voted him off. That would be fascinating.
He just wasn't interesting. I wasn't engaged by him. They had to sort of talk about it and justify it as to why.
Oh no, I don't. I think that would be mean-spirited.
Oh, okay.
I wouldn't do that. But just knowing that they did it for whatever reason, because then you could speculate. Because sometimes then they'd be getting rid of someone because they're too good.
Oh, that's true.
Oh,
Yep.
let's get rid of her. She's really good and really funny, and she keeps showing us up. I'm voting her off. So you could start projecting different reasons for the vote off onto the vote off. Whereas if it's the public, then it is just they didn't like him or her. But if the presenters are doing it, there's a bit more intrigue. I don't know if this is this idea is going, well, obviously this idea is not going anywhere because we don't make this stuff, but I see a lot of problems with this idea, but I just thought it would be fun for us to chat about.
So you're voting this idea off, even though it's your idea.
I'm eliminating it.
There is a connection between your two ideas tonight because they know they're being voted. They're trying to trump each other's ideas. This is, you know what I mean? There's a sort of a trumping conversation that's going on with the presenters to try and not be the one who loses or the one that's not as interesting as someone else.
I told you they were both game showy.
I like that.
So Tim, time for an idea that's come from a patron, one of our Patreon supporters. You too can support us on Patreon by going to patreon.com/unmadefm. Now, I chose one at random here, Tim, and the one I didn't even look at the idea or the email. I just printed one out.
Oh, wow.
And this one comes from Colin.
Cool.
Do you want to guess where Colin's from?
Well, we've had a lot from Canada. I'm going to say Utah.
Here's the email. It says, I am Colin from Canada. He put in brackets, I figured you needed more Canadians to submit their shout-outs.
Nice.
I am from Vancouver Island, which is off the coast of British Columbia and is not the city of Vancouver.
Yep.
Colin is a university student, double majors in Greco-Roman studies and history. And I thought you'd find this interesting because his particular area of interest is the politicisation and re-implication of historical events and eras for the general public. For example, how politicians use and abuse history, or how the general public experiences history in books, TV shows and video games, etc.
That is interesting.
It sounds sort of up your alley.
Yeah, love it. Interesting. Very interesting.
Anyway, I'll put you guys in touch and you can hug it out. He says, my idea for a podcast I will never make is called... Actually, you're going to like this too. Colin sounds like he should be your mate, Tim. Here we go.
It's funny. I have another friend that's just moved to Vancouver Island a little while ago. So
Well,
his name is not Colin.
my idea for a podcast I will never make is called And They Also Do, though I don't know if that title is the best. The central idea is to review the side careers of famous people. Example, review the music career of someone primarily known for acting, or review the acting career of someone known for modelling, or review the writing career of someone known for painting. I think it could be somewhat motivational to know how everyone, including people who are still actively successful, have failures, or if they are actually good at multiple things, it could expose listeners to a relatively undiscovered song or book, etc.
Yeah.
Cheers, from Colin. I bet you love that idea.
Yeah, I do love that idea.
That's right in the Tim zone, that one.
I like Colin. He's a good guy.
I reckon you two should do a podcast.
Well, there are a few cliches associated with it, like the Johnny Depp rock star Johnny Depp film star who wants to be a rock star has a band going. Keanu Reeves is another one of these. You're sort of tainted listening to the music because it's kind of just because they're a film star that they're, you know what I mean?
Russell Crowe does like that too, isn't he?
And there's the other thing where rock stars end up like John Bon Jovi ends up making films, so he also makes films. But there's a more interesting side to it as well, where you find out that, like Ronnie Wood from the Rolling Stones is a painter, is an artist, does some incredible paintwork.
Well, Alan Bean, the astronaut who was the fourth man to walk on the moon and who died just a few weeks ago, became a very accomplished painter and did lots of moon paintings.
As did George W. Bush in recent times.
He's not such a good painter in my opinion, but anyway.
Perhaps not quite.
Michael Collins, another astronaut who was on Apollo 11, but is the guy that didn't walk on the moon while Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin did, is a good painter and sells his paintings.
Wow, that's
Well, basically, my knowledge of people with double careers is limited to astronauts who paint.
Astronauts. Painting seems to be the second thing that everyone does. If you can't do something, oh, they also paint. It's like, oh, well, that's great.
The Neville brothers, Gary and Philip, who both played for Manchester United, Philip also played a lot for Everton, apparently were both excellent cricketers, and they probably could have played for England.
Oh, wow. Yeah, there's a few like that who get to who are so skilled they get to choose. It's like, will they go basketball or will they go cricket? You hear about these prodigies that come through. Prodigies, I mean.
You were like that. You had to choose between swimming and Australian rules football and went for academia instead.
I chose neither. That's right. The ultimate sacrifice. I laid down both my careers for the greater good.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. Probably the greater good of whomever I would have played against, obviously, because they've succeeded having not to compete with me.
You laid down a promising football career in favour of quarter pounders.
That's right. In favour of not going to training and developing those skills. Potential is notoriously difficult to measure, isn't it? Like, we've all got potential.
Yeah, Tim, I think you're pretty safe on that front.
Who knows what I could have done?
It's hard to measure, but it's not that hard.
Well, you're a classic. You're the one you played two sports at school, didn't you? I played a bit of footy and in my very young years, and that's it. And then we played a bit of soccer together, but you were more competitive, weren't you, with cricket and soccer? Did you ever aspire to taking either of them any further?
No. I was all right at cricket and soccer, but I never had delusions of grandeur. I didn't think I would ever do it professionally.
Right.
I did have when I was young, a little bit of a fantasy in the back of my head because I was a wicket keeper in cricket. And for those who don't know, that's like a position in cricket, a bit like the catcher in baseball. This was when I was like, a schoolboy level player, just like an average schoolboy level player. I always had a dream that I would be at an international cricket match, like watching Australia, and Australia's wicket keeper would be injured and they would put like an announcement over the PA system saying, is anyone out there a wicket keeper? And I'd like say, well, I can do it. And I'd like somehow get to play for Australia that way, like through the back door, just like filling in. I was like, oh, wow, he's actually quite good. We'll keep him in the team.
It's funny when you reach that age where people playing your favourite competitive sports. My favourite sport is Australian rules football, where people are retiring and they're your age, you're sort of retiring around 35, 36, and something in your mind goes, well, it really is too late for me now, isn't it? Like, even the guys... Even if I had decided to do it, it'd be all over now. So
I think it's too late.
But this is there are a lot of people who do they also do flying. This is another thing they do. A lot of people choose as a second thing. Oh, they got a pilot's license. It's a secret passion they have and they can fly planes.
Yeah.
I've been surprised in conversations with people like that. It's like, oh, they also fly. And it's like, oh, wow, that's great. Taking the time.
You know how it's too late for us to play cricket for Australia? Not that we ever were going to, right? But it is too late for us now.
Officially, it is too late.
Is there anything like a fantasy thing that you would love to do that you probably should have done by now if you were going to do it, but it's not too late? Like, is there something that if you put your mind to it, you think you could still accomplish that is like a big deal?
Oh, look, I don't think so. Well, there are things that you could choose another job that you might find enormously satisfying. Like I could decide I want to be a journalist and get a journalism degree.
But do you think it's even too late? Is it too late for that in this day and age? Like, are they going to take on a rookie journalist who's,
It depends what you mean.
Gone past 40?
Well, they may not, or they may like someone in, with experience. I have no idea, but I'm just saying it's the kind of thing like you could choose to go into something and you could maybe get into it, but it doesn't mean you're necessarily going to reach the heights of it or something like that. Like playing for Australia, you could play cricket every weekend if you wanted to, but you're not going to play for Australia.
No, you physically can't do it.
Yeah.
I sometimes think about apply it to something like climbing Mount Everest because I'm a bit obsessed with Mount Everest, but I'm not a climber or a mountaineer. I have zero experience. And even though I'm a bit older now, I imagine if I put my mind to it and started learning to be a climber and get those skills, it's probably not too late it's certainly not too late to climb Mount Everest.
No, it's just about whether you came across any health issues along the way or if the doctor said that's not wise for someone your age to do it, which would be a wonderful reminder of how time has progressed.
Old people go up Mount Everest all the time.
Oh, do they? Yeah, right, okay. People make it to the summit, do they? Like, more advanced
Yeah, I mean,
years?
these days you pay enough money, a Sherpa drags you to the top, it seems.
Okay. Why don't you just do that, man? Just sit back and get dragged to the top of Mount Everest.
Yeah.
That sounds like the way to do
The
it.
thing is, I'd spent all that time learning to climb and getting in shape, and by the time it came time to do it, they'd probably have a train going up one of the ridges.
That's right. Get the last chopper to the summit. There are things you could do, like you could go into politics and things like that. People do that at later ages, but the sort of way it takes to be in a major party or to be a major success, you need to build those alliances. Unless you're dropped in because you're a celebrity or something like that, it's very difficult to build your way up in enough time to reach a position of serious power. But either of us could go into politics and you may become a cabinet minister, but it's extremely unlikely, even for people that are in, Parliament now or have built up those alliances. I guess what I'm trying to say is that there would have to be quite a bit of luck involved and timing and...
I've got another idea for a podcast based on Colin's email here, Tim.
Yeah.
How about a podcast called Double Major, where you interview people who are doing double majors at university on two things that are quite different from each other and asking them why they're doing those two things?
Oh, yeah. And how close they are to deciding which might take precedent over the other one. Yeah. I think the spirit of Collins is to interview people that are already very well known for something and to find a secret passion.
Have you read Tom Hanks's book yet? You bought his book, didn't you?
I haven't. It's his book of short stories, which are all about typewriters, but I haven't read it. No, I haven't read it.
Is it just one you've got sitting on the side bed table to make yourself look cool?
No. A novel by Tom Hanks isn't something that makes you look cool. I tell you, when it's a book of short stories, right, there's a lot of pressure on the first story, isn't there?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like even if it's all right, you're probably not going to go to the second story unless it's an author that's really, you know what I mean? You're already totally sold on.
Well, they're always going to put the best one first, aren't they? So
I guess so. Which is also depressing because you go, oh, that was great, but they're all downhill from here. Okay, I've got another idea. This will be an interesting idea. This is also related to films again. My idea is to watch the film Groundhog Day every single day and record a podcast review of it every single day and release it every single day.
What, just over and over again?
Yeah. Just, but totally coming to it, not like you've listened to it before. Like not saying, all right, well, picking up from yesterday. You just simply go, well, here we go, folks. This is
So like the slate has been wiped clean, like in the film. And like, so someone listening would be like, hang on, have they not done this already?
That's right. Wasn't this yesterday? And you just launch in again with the same level of enthusiasm and passion for the film.
Attacking it a different way each time, or just like attacking it the same way each time? Like, oh, well, this is a really good film and it starts like this. Or would each podcast be slightly different? Like, I want to talk about Groundhog Day and I want to talk about the characters in it today, or I want to talk about the plot. Or
you could come at it a different way. I mean, you could go in as if you're part of the day that's the same every time, where you just come in. Yeah. But that means that would get a bit dull because in the film, of course, Phil gets to improve each day. You know, he can change each day. You can make the review slightly better or refined or improved or come at a different angle. But you shouldn't refer to previous episodes. Otherwise, it'll be a series. It's got to be the same. You know what I mean? Like it's episode 1 of this new podcast series about Groundhog Day.
I love it. That would be so confusing for listeners. They'd be like, this sounds familiar, but slightly different. Like, that would be a weird thing to do to your listeners, wouldn't it? Mm-hmm. We would never do that to our listeners.
No. No, well, it would be recycling an idea.
No, just for the sake of a cheap laugh, and we're well beyond that.
I'd never stoop that low.